What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel for another installment of Bible Study with an Ex-Pastor. I often like to remind people, for those of you, especially if you're new, that if you're looking for a good Bible study to learn more about the Word of God, this isn't it. If you're looking for something to sharpen your understanding of the Word of God, this isn't it. I often tell people that these conversations are not deep theological dives, and if you're looking for any type of truth value from this particular experiment, you're in the wrong place. This is more therapy than theology, which basically means that I'm just sharing this stuff after being in ministry for more than 2 decades. 2 decades, that was weird. 2 decades, I deconverted a decade ago, which means I stopped believing. I became an atheist. We're doing this series as a way to go back and review some of the things that I used to believe, some of the things that I used to think. And I thought, what great way to do this than just starting with the beginning of the book and going all the way through the end, just like I did when I was a child. And when I did again when I was a young minister. And when I did again when I was trying to get closer to God. Apparently, it takes a whole lot to get close to this man. But anyway, so I did want to share that just so that we're all on the same page. If you come to me and you're like, "Hey, but Darante, the way you interpreted that wasn't right," I'm going to say royally, "Fuck you. Don't give a damn. Don't care at all. Could care less. Nada, niche, nope. Don't give a damn. Don't come to me with that bullshit. I don't believe it. Please respect that as an understanding that no, I don't believe this. I don't believe any of this is true. There's not enough historicity in the world in this to ever bring me back to such a belief, nor is there a utility in me believing whether this is true or not. So I'd ask everybody, please respect what we're in this for. This is just therapy. I invite you all to do the same thing that I'm doing. Those of you who enjoy these types of conversations and these types of monologues, if you will, to do the same thing. If you've deconverted, whether you are a non believer or a fringe thinker, like I like to call it, then this is a great opportunity for you to go back and just kind of look over these stories at face value and kind of remember. It's like walking down memory lane. Remember, what did I used to think about this? Because one of the beautiful things that happens for me in going back and doing this is that I realized that the deconstruction aspect was always there for me. There were always things that just didn't gel right. If there was anything that kept me from, I guess, being 100% deceived, it was the Bible itself. The Bible itself, for me, was just not a convincing book. It wasn't a convincing book that there was a God and that this God was all powerful and that this God was all knowing, nor that this God was all loving. The character in the book is anything but, as we've seen. All right, but today we're going to be jumping into Genesis chapter 42, picking up a little bit more on Joseph's story. But before we do, I want to remind you to make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Consider joining our community either through Patreon, Discord, or the YouTube membership program. Consider volunteering in the community. Consider financially supporting the channel. You can do that through super chats, super thanks. You can buy some merch, and we have giving links all throughout the description. So you have a cornucopia of options, right? All right, I think I've said everything that I needed to say. Let's kind of jump into this. I will kind of let you know right at the offset of this that this one might get a little choppy, which means I may have to stop the recording at certain parts. But I'm doing my best. I have a few things going on right now, and I've got to be on top of all of them. So we're going to try to roll the best way we can. Does that make sense? Are we in agreement there? Is this something that we can all do, that we can commit to? I thought so. I thought so. All right, so let's jump into this. Let me get my mouse over here. Genesis chapter 42, verse 1. Now Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, and Jacob said to his sons, "Why are you staring at one another?" Now, I've brought up this question before, but just from an author's point of view, this aggravates the hell out of me that Jacob's name was changed to Israel, but the writers just willy-nilly go back and forth between calling him Jacob and Israel. I'm like, what's the purpose of changing the man's name if we still gonna use the other name? This just made no sense to me. That's me being nitpicky for damn sure, but still, I'm like, I thought his name was changed. Okay. You got to respect people when they change their names. It's like misgendering people. At this moment, they are misnaming Jacob, and that shit ain't right. I'm sorry, Israel. I misnamed him and trying to stand up for him. Which, to be clear, Israel/Jacob doesn't need anybody standing up for him. We've already determined through reading this that he is a horrible human. Horrible Human of the Year award goes to Jacob/Israel. All right, so then he said, look, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us from that place so that we may live and not die. Now let's consider that. We're only 2 verses in, and this is a stark contrast to who Jacob has been and the narrative that has been applied to Jacob. The narrative that has been applied to Jacob is that everything Jacob touches is blessed. The narrative that has been applied to Jacob is that everywhere he goes, God is with him. But apparently, God can only be with one person at a time because it seems that now that God is with Joseph, God can no longer be with Jacob, and therefore Jacob is about to die in famine. And notice prior to this time, especially when you consider Jacob and you consider Isaac and you consider Abraham, in all of these cases, all of these people have gone through famines before, and God would just send them somewhere, right? God would send them somewhere so that they could kind of have their needs met. But in this case, God isn't sending them anywhere, and Jacob has to get the blessing through hearsay. Jacob has to hear that Egypt has grain, and then the goal is to go down there and buy some. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. All right, let's check this out. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, "I am afraid that harm may happen to him." Now, I wonder, is this because Jacob has realized that it was his sons, that did something to Joseph, their brother Joseph, and maybe he's thinking that, oof, I don't want y'all doing the same thing to my son Benjamin, which again just kind of makes Jacob a horrible parent once again, because again, Jacob serves the God who kills people for pulling out. You feel me? But this same God does not seem to have a problem with brothers selling their brothers into slavery only after being convinced not to kill them. Apparently, that's not evil in God's sight. And so then, verse 5, so the sons of Israel came to buy grain among those who were coming, because the famine was also in the land of Canaan. Now, I've also highlighted over and over again how many times we've seen this ideology of Canaan show up. But in this sense, I'd just like to kind of drive the fact home that even though this is Canaan and this is supposed to be where God told them to go, God told them to go there and told them that if you go there, I will bless you and I will take care of you. But it seems that every time they get here, there is famine, so there is famine in the land of God's protection. Isn't that interesting? That there is famine in the land of God's protection. Like, this is supposed to be the place that God chose. God handpicked this place himself. What's the problem here? Why can't God manage the land that he sent me to? It's crazy. Why do I always have to go somewhere else and get grain if this is supposed to be the place that God has given me? I don't know. That's just me. That's just me. You know. All right, let's read a little more. And let me check here, make sure. Yoink. Beautimus. All right, verse 6. Now Joseph was the ruler over the land. He was the one who sold grain to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Ooh. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he disguised himself to them and spoke to them harshly. He said to them, "Where have you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." All right. So just to kind of give a little picture here, Joseph is dealing with his brothers. Now, we already know from the last chapter that because he's good at interpreting dreams, and apparently nobody else in all of Egypt has the ability to interpret dreams. Isn't that odd? And just to be clear, you don't even have to have the ability to interpret dreams. You just got to be able to lie and pretend that you do. Because at this time in human history, as if now, you have no way to verify whether someone interpreted that dream correctly or not. It is all highly subjective. So I'm supposed to believe that nobody else in Egypt would be willing to lie, not to die. Nope, nope, nope. So Joseph is in Egypt. He's giving them this plan about, hey, the dreams mean that famine is coming, so we need to, during the good years, make sure everything that we're storing up stuff so that when the famine hits, we'll have plenty of stuff to make sure everybody can eat and all that good stuff. Very solid plan. Good job, Joseph. And so because he came up with that plan, Pharaoh promoted him. Gave him a good position second to him. So now he's pretty much the ruler of the land. So they say. And he sees his brothers out here, which is very odd to me that the ruler of the land is out here when total randos are coming to get handouts. But he's out here. But maybe he's just that shrewd of a businessman where he has to watch every single transaction. Um, and so he's watching, he recognizes his brothers, and so he disguises himself so they don't recognize him. And he speaks to them harshly, and they're like, hey, we come from Canaan and we're going to get some food. So, verse 8, but Joseph had recognized his brothers, although they did not recognize him. You kind of said that in verse 7. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he had about them. And he said to them, you are spies. You have come to look at the undefended parts of our land. And they said to him, no, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies. Are they honest men? Have we seen anything in the story that makes Joseph's brothers seem honest? All of them lied about what happened to Joseph to the father. So like I don't know. I don't know. Um and yet he said to him, no, but you have come to look at the undefended parts of our lands. But they said, your servants are 12 brothers in all, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no longer alive. Which is odd, because that means they're sticking with this lie they told. They remember selling, Joseph into slavery. And so I don't understand this. Yet Joseph said to them, it is as I said to you, you are spies. Like, I feel like Joseph is driving this point home a little hard, and maybe this isn't Joseph speaking right here, but the writers trying to let something seep through a little bit to let us know that no, these people were spies, bruh. I don't know. But by this you will be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave this place until your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and have him get your brother while you remain confined, so that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. But if not, by the life of Pharaoh, you are certainly spies. So he put them all together in prison for 3 days. Now, this is funny to me because Joseph's story ends with his brothers a little differently than it's going on here. And I don't know if I remember this back and forth happening quite like this. I do remember Joseph going back and forth with his brothers, pretending not, disguising himself so they didn't recognize him. But I do remember him speaking harshly to give off this vibe, like the vibe, like I'm an authority, I'm an Egyptian, and you're an undocumented, immigrant, and I don't know what you're over here for. I did kind of get this, but I did not remember that Joseph put his brothers in prison. Oh yeah, Joseph is being petty. He said, "Oh no, I'm getting y'all back." At first, I thought he was doing this when I was a kid because I thought, "Oh, maybe he's afraid that they're going to recognize him and then they're going to try to do something to him again." But because it's likely. But then I thought, nope, Joseph is doing this, and this is as I begin to mature, I guess, quote unquote. Joseph is doing this to really test them and to see if they've changed and if they've matured. And I'd probably go back or if back then I probably would have preached this along the lines of, you got to be careful about who you let back in your life. That just because they show up don't mean they ready for the show. And so Joseph was putting them through the audition of a lifetime, because last time you fumbled the bag, and this, I would have went somewhere like that and had a really really good time with it. But so yeah, now thinking, I'm like, damn, he put his brothers in prison and everything. Joseph is being petty. All right, so give me just a moment. I have something to check on, and I'll be right back. All right, thank you for holding on with me there. We are back to regularly scheduled programming. All right, so let's move on to verse 18. Joseph has put his brothers in prison. Get my mouse over here. Now Joseph said to them on the third day, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined in your prison." Interesting. "But as for the rest of you, go, carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified, and you will not die." Oh, this has gotten serious. Joseph is basically saying, hey, if you don't come back with the baby brother, you're going to die. But it's interesting. He basically lets everybody else goes and says, now you'll just leave one brother here stuck with me. And then the rest of you can go take the grain to your family, but you still need to bring me the baby brother back, because that's going to be the most important part. I need the baby brother. Bring me the baby. Get in my belly. That works. That works, right? All right. So, mm, and they did so. All right. Let's go to verse 21. Then they said to one another, "Truly we are guilty concerning our brother, because we saw the distress of his soul when he pleaded with us, yet we would not listen. For that reason, this distress has happened to us." And so they're basically at a moment where they're thinking and they're like, dang, why is this happening to us? Oh, that's right. So this is definitely a karmic type of thing. What goes around comes around. They're thinking, man, truly, because we did this thing to our brother, we saw the distress of his soul. He was pleading with us. And I'm like, wow, why when the story was written, didn't we get that part? I would have loved to see that. But that's, just like some backsplash right there. So when this actually happened, Joseph was pleading, he was distressed about this thing, and they wouldn't listen, typically, as people do. And they're now realizing that maybe we've got our comeuppance. Maybe the chickens have come home to roost. Mm. By the way, that was the quote that Malcolm X issued on Kennedy's death that ultimately got him ostracized from the Nation of Islam. Very interesting times in history. So Reuben answered them, saying, "Did I not tell you, do not sin against the boy? And you would now listen, and you would not listen. Now justice for his blood is required." They did not know, however, that Joseph understood, for there was an interpreter between them. Okay. See, again, all right. I hate to jump on this. I don't know why my camera's doing that. I hate to jump on this, but this is problematic. All right, just this one line is problematic, and I'm sure you're all bright enough to know why. They said they did not know, however, that Joseph understood, for there was an interpreter between them. All right, you know what? It's not as problematic as I thought. They didn't know that Joseph understood, because they don't know that Joseph is their brother. And this interpreter line is there because they don't know Joseph is his brother. So it's like the writers are trying to say they safely assumed that this person, who's actually their brother, didn't know what they were talking about, because there's an interpreter in the room. And why would he need an interpreter? Okay, so I won't, I'll back up. I was about to snap there for a moment, but it's okay. Then he turned away from them and wept. But when he returned to them and spoke to them, he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, but also to return every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. And that is what was done for them. Now, this is problematic, because though this was Joseph's idea, we need to remember that this is not Joseph's grain. All right. And so what Joseph is doing right now is giving away Egypt's grain. You see that? He's giving away Egypt's grain, giving them money back, and giving them extra provisions for the journey. And these people have done nothing right since they entered the story. The only thing they're doing at this moment is being poor. And Joseph is like, oh, they got it now. They got it. They've had enough. Let's give them free shit that they don't deserve, which is pretty much what happens here. I probably wouldn't have called that out before, but I will now. You know, that ain't right. That ain't right. They should have had to pay just like everybody else. And they came willing and ready to pay. So it's like what Joseph does here, just in my humble opinion, is a slap in the face to Egypt. And I want to know, if Pharaoh would have known about this, how would he have felt? Let's continue. Verse 26. So they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed from there. But when one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the overnight campsite, he saw his money, and behold, it was in the opening of his sack. All right. So he said to his brother, my money has been returned. And look, it is right in my sack. Then their hearts sank, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? I'm supposed to believe that. I'm supposed to believe that they get their money. They surprisingly have money, and they say, oh man, God is punishing us. What is this? This just doesn't make any sense. Or maybe they're just so confused at why God would do something good for them, even though God doesn't do anything here. This is still just Joseph stealing Egypt's grain. Because that's what it is at this moment. When you take it and you say they can have it without paying for it, at that moment, you're the thief. If you're working at Walmart and you say, you know what, ma'am, don't even worry about them Skittles. You don't even got to pay for that. You the thief at that moment. Those ain't your Skittles to give away. Those is not your Skittles. Stop that. Stop giving away Skittles that are not yours. That's the whole message. I'm just playing. All right, let's continue on. Verse 29. When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him everything that had happened to them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly with us and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, we are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no longer alive, and the youngest is with our father today in the land of Canaan. Now, I don't know how any of that is evidence that you're not a spy. I don't get that. I don't see how that's evidence that you're honest. So you say, no, we're honest men. It's 12 of us. That's how you know we're honest. We're not spies. We're sons of a father. We couldn't be spies if we were sons of a father, could we? It just sounds odd to me. I don't know. Like if I was the one that caught you and I sincerely thought you were spies and that was your answer, yeah, off with their heads. They're damn show lying. I don't know. It's not feasible for me. But the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me and take grain for the famine of your households and go. But bring your youngest brother to me so that I may know that you are not spies, but honest men. I will give your brother to you and you may trade in the land. All right. Okay. So they're recounting the story. Now it came about as they were emptying their sacks that behold, every man's bag of money was in his sack. When they and their father saw their bags of money, they were afraid. You see it? There it is again. This afraid thing. I'm not understanding this. I don't know if the writer's given me enough insight. Other than this karmic thing, like, is their version of God this God that blesses you with shit that you don't deserve right before he takes you out? Because now, if that's in the story somewhere, then I'd get this kind of fear right here. But as of now, it definitely seems like the writers are just trying to fluff a narrative that really does not fit. And then verse 36. And their father Jacob said to them, you have deprived me of my sons. Joseph is gone and Simeon is gone, and now you would take Benjamin. All these things are against me, which means the first person they sent to get Benjamin did not return to Benjamin. The second group of people they sent with Benjamin did not return back with Benjamin. And so, and now Simeon is stuck back at prison with Joseph. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, You may put my 2 sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my care, and I will return to you. But Jacob said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should happen to him on the journey you are taking, then you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. Now, I feel like I would have mentioned it if we would have ran into this before, but I think this is the first time in the book of Genesis, which means the first time in the Bible as it is ordered, that we run into the word Sheol, which has sometimes been horribly misrepresented for hell, which is that's not what that is, or at least not hell in the Christian context. But this is interesting to me. I thought something that was really odd. Again, how this book comes to be the standard of morality in anybody's mind is beyond me. Even when I was a believer, I didn't think the Bible was the standard of morality. That's just odd. Most of the people in the Bible are just absolutely awful. And I'm not just saying that because of it's in the Bible, but I'm almost positive that most people 2,000 years ago were just like absolutely awful. But relatively, it's all relative. It's all relative. They would have been great, just great for that time period, but for this time period, just awful. But case in point here, Reuben offers to allow his father to kill his children if something happens to his brother. These are not healthy family dynamics. This is definitely not how you build a healthy family. Like I used to always say when it came to like people doing conferences on a biblical marriage and things of that, like which marriage in the Bible would you want to pattern your marriage uh by? That's funny that a book that has advice on how marriages should work has not one example of a good marriage. It's insane. And so, the same way people who say they raise their children by biblical standards, that should be absolutely frightening and should be an immediate call to CPS. Anybody who's using the Bible as a standard to raise their children or build their families need to be sent somewhere. And I often try to remind people that some of the most damaged communities are communities that view this book as a source of truth. And it's why their families and their communities are so broken, because this is not a healthy reflection of how families should engage each other. Not in my opinion. Like we got to do better than this. All right, let's continue right along. Let's go ahead. I think we got time for another chapter. So let's go to verse 33. Let me get down here to the arrow. It just makes it easier. All right, so this is the return to Egypt. So let's dive in, shall we? Now the famine was severe in the land. So it came about when they had finished eating the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, go back, buy us a little food. Oh, they went through that, huh? Judah spoke to him, however, saying, the man sternly warned us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. And so, I mean, mind you, what this means is Jacob has literally said, fuck Simeon. That's what's happening at this moment. Because I don't know if y'all remember, Simeon is still in prison. Simeon is in prison in Egypt. And Joseph has basically said, I'm not letting him go until I see your youngest brother so that I know that y'all are not liars. And these men who feel so bad about about doing their brother wrong and so bad about getting this money, feeling that somehow getting the money is God's way of punishing them, do not feel it bad that they're not following through on the commitment that they made. And that just seems to be overlooked. And so they all seem to be very much just cowards to me. That's just me. All right. If you send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy you food. So basically, again, Jacob is not trying to do the right thing, nor are the brothers even really trying to do the right thing up until the moment that it comes that they don't have any food. And it's like, oh, well, we got to go back down to Egypt anyway to get food. And he's not going to give us food if we don't have the brother with us. So if you send us the brother, then we'll go down and get the food. But if you do not send him, we can't go down. For the man said to us, you will not see my face unless your brother is with you. So again, if you don't send us our brother, we're not going down. So again, what everybody is saying here is fuck Simeon. This is what everybody is saying because Simeon is still in prison. Then Israel said, why did you treat me so badly by telling the man whether you still had another brother?" It's odd, right? But they said, "The man specifically asked about us, and our relative saying, 'Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' So we answered his questions. Could we possibly know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Now, again, this is an absolute lie. We read the conversation. Nowhere did Joseph ask those questions. It's very interesting. So Judah said to his father Israel, "Send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, so that we may live and not die, we as well as you, and our little ones. I myself will take responsibility for him. You may demand him back from me. If I do not bring him back to you and present him to you, then you can let me take the blame forever. For if we had not delayed, surely by now we could have returned twice." This story is not as exciting as I remember it being. But let's carry on. Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best products of the land in your bags and carry down to the man as a gift a little balsam and a little honey, labdanum resin, and myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds." I'm trying to figure out how the fuck is Canaan in famine if you have pistachio nuts and almonds, and you got myrrh, and you got resin, and you got honey. I'm interested here. I'm like, I don't feel like the writers know what they're talking about at this moment. And I've read stories like that before. Writers often don't know what the hell they're talking about. "And take double the money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was turned in the opening of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also, and arise, return to the man. And may God Almighty grant you compassion in the sight of the man, so that he will release to you your other brother and Benjamin." So now, the other brother, which is Simeon, I guess he's the one that shouldn't be named at this moment. "And as for me, if I am bereaved of my sons, I am bereaved. Whatever will be, will be. Que sera, sera. It is what it is." So the men took this gift, and they took double the money in their hand. And Benjamin then set out and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to his house steward, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make preparations for the men, or to dine with me at noon." So the man did as Joseph said, and brought the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid, because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, "It is because of the money that was returned in our sacks the first time that we are being brought in, so that he may attack us and overpower us and take us as slaves with our donkeys." Slaves with our donkeys. They're concerned about the donkeys here. So they approached Joseph's house steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house and said, "Oh, my lord, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, and it happened when we came to the campsite that we opened our sacks, and behold, each man's money was in the opening of his sack, our money in full, so we have brought it back in our hand. We have also brought down other money in our hand to buy food. We do not know who put money in our sacks." But he said, "Peace be to you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. Your money was in my possession." Then he brought Simeon out. All right, so okay, I just need to read this again. So they approached Joseph's house steward. They're not talking to Joseph. They're talking to Joseph's steward, which would be an Egyptian, which would likely be involved in Egyptian religions. But just as we've seen with some of the other Egyptians in the book of Genesis, he says, "Your God and the God of your fathers has given you this treasure in your sacks." How does he know who their God is? How does he know who the God of their fathers is? That hasn't been a part of the conversation. The writer overplayed his hands here. This was, nope. The man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys feed. So they prepared the gift for Joseph's arrival at noon, for they had heard that they were to eat a meal there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the gift which was in their hand, and they bowed down to the ground before him, which at this moment would be like a call to those earlier dreams that he was having. Then he asked them about their welfare and said, "Is your old father well, of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" And they said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." Then they bowed down again in homage. Um, and notice they call their father the servant of this person who they believe is an Egyptian at this moment. That's odd. And as he raised his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, he said, is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me?" Then he said, "May God be gracious to you, my son." Joseph then hurried out, for he was deeply stirred over his brother, and he looked for a place to weep. So he entered his chamber and wept there. Oh. Then he washed his face and came out, and he controlled himself and said, "Serve the meal." Then they served him by himself, and Joseph's brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. So it is an abomination to the Egyptians to eat bread with the Hebrews, but it is not an abomination to the Egyptians to acknowledge the God of the Hebrews. They didn't think this through. Now they were seated before him, from the firstborn according to his birthright to the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in astonishment. Then he took portions to them from his own table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank freely with them. Now, mind you, Egypt is in this, period of famine, and the whole idea was to take the stuff from the good times and to give it to the people of Egypt during the bad times. And Joseph is just at this moment being incredibly wasteful with Egypt's resources, and I'm just not cool with that. I think that's problematic for a laundry list of reasons. They here just drinking and just eating, and then he loading Benjamin up. This is nepotism. This is nepotism. Joseph is doing nepotism right now. You're guilty, Joseph. I thought you were a good guy, but I am not okay with this. But not only is it nepotism, this is also very much reminds me of a woman who's escaped an abusive relationship but is running back to it. Joseph was absolutely treated harshly by these people, but just because they are family, he feels like he owes them, and that's fine. If you feel like you owe somebody, you pay them, but don't you take money out of my stuff and give it to him, which is exactly what he's doing right now. I am, I can't think of a good word, so I'm just going to say, how rude. All right, I think we have enough time to get through one more chapter. So let's give it a try. The brothers are brought back. That sounds like an album. The boys are back in town. All right. Chapter 44, verse 1. Then he commanded his house steward, saying, "Fill the men's sack with food as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the opening of his sack, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the opening of the sack of the youngest, and his money for the grain." And he did as Joseph had told him. As soon as it was light, the men were sent away, they with their donkeys. They had just left the city and were not far away when Joseph said to his house steward, "Up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid evil for good? Is this not that from which my Lord drinks, in which he indeed uses for divination? You have done wrong in doing this.'" That is very interesting to me here, that I don't think I saw that before, that the steward says this cup, which they're going to explain in a few minutes, or this chalice or whatever, is the thing that Joseph drinks from, and it is also what Joseph uses for divination. Now I could easily assume that Joseph is doing divination on behalf of Egypt, but it could also be that the divination principles or practice is something that Joseph gets from his Hebraic roots, because we do see divination throughout the entire Old Testament and even in the New Testament. When they're choosing the 13th apostle to replace Judas, when they choose Matthias, they do so by casting lots, which is divination. All right, so verse 6. So he overtook them and spoke these words to them, and they said to him, "Why does my Lord say such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money which we found in the opening of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? With whomever of your servants it is found, he shall die, and we shall also be my Lord's slaves." This is pretty extreme. So they're saying, look, if you find it among us, whoever you find it with, you can kill him, and the rest of us will be slaves. And maybe they're saying this because they're just so sure that they didn't do it. But that's not typically how you should approach moments such as this in life. So he said, "Now let it indeed be according to your words. He whom it is found shall be my slave, but the rest of you shall be considered innocent." Yeah, that doesn't track. He said, "Let it be done according to your words," but then what he describes is not what they said. So he says, "Whoever it's found with will be my slave, and the rest of you will be innocent." They said, "Whoever is found among you will be dead, and the rest of us will be your slaves." So again, I just consider that bad writing. Verse 11, then they hurried, each man lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes in grief, and when each man had loaded his donkey, they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there, and they fell down to the ground before him. Joseph said, "What is this thing that you have done? Do you not know that a man who is like me can indeed practice divination?" How did I miss this before? The words probably just didn't mean anything to me. So Judah said, "What can we say to my Lord? What words can we speak, and how can we justify ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, both we and the one in whose possession the cup had been found." But he said, "Far be it from me to do this. The man in whose possession the cup has been found, he shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father." Then Judah approached him and said, "O my lord, may your servants please speak a word in my lord's ear, and do not be angry with your servant, for you are equal to Pharaoh. My lord asked his servants, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my lord, We have an old father and a little boy born in our father's old age. Now his brother is dead, so he alone is left of his mother, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me so that I may set my eyes on him. But we said to my Lord, The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. You said to your servants, however, Unless your youngest brother comes down to you, you will not see my face again. So it came about when we went up to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord, and our father said, Go back, buy us a little food. I absolutely hate when they do this in the book of Genesis. Like, this is again bad writing, and forgive me for just getting all pissed, but this pisses me the fuck off. Like, why are you repeating a story you've already repeated 3 or 4 times? Damn, man. Just let the pages be blank. Okay, let's hurry up. Like, how where's the chase, and how do we cut to it? Where is the point, and how do we get there? Because that's just aggravating. But he said, if our youngest brother is with us, then we'll go down. Verse 27. Then your servant, my father, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. Surely he is torn to pieces. If you also, yeah, we read that. So now when I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, since our father's life is so attached to the boy's life, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. Dramatic much? So your servants will bring the gray hair of your servant, our father, down to Sheol in sorrow. For your servant accepted responsibility for the boy from my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then my father can let me take the blame forever. So now, please let your servant remain as a slave to my lord instead of the boy, and let the boy go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear that I may see the evil that would overtake my father. All right. So we've read 3 chapters, and so far, all 3 of these chapters are telling the exact same story, adding maybe an inch to it instead of a mile in each different chapter. But This is interesting. I'm debating about whether or not we should go to the next chapter or not. I don't know. I don't know how I feel. Let me just go look at it and see. Um, is this where the story is wrapped up at? Because I would not want to spend. Yeah. So you know what? I think we will hit this chapter. We'll hit this one more chapter before we wrap up. So we'll hit Genesis chapter 45, only because the three chapters we've read so far have just been repeats of the same story. It's the story happening, then it's the brothers repeating the story to Jacob, and then it's Jacob repeating the story back to the brothers, and then it's the brothers repeating the story back to Joseph's servant. And then it's the brothers repeating the story back to Joseph. That shit is aggravating. So, to make up for a little bit of that time, what we will do is add one more chapter today. All right. So we are in this chapter 45, and maybe this chapter will give us something worth talking about, because so far in this, I don't even know what to name this episode yet, because this has been so boring. This is, man, it's so anticlimactic because I was so looking forward to the Joseph story. Maybe 45 will give us something worth our excitement. Then Joseph could not control himself in front of everyone standing before him, and he shouted, "Have everyone leave me." So there was no one with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard all about it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were terrified in his presence. This is an absolutely stupid question, because the brothers did just go through the whole recounting of the fact that they left the father back at home to bring the baby brother, and the father was so upset. They literally just told Joseph that if we don't take our baby brother Benjamin home, our father will die. And then Joseph says, "Is my father still alive?" Like, damn, I thought Joseph was brighter than this. But again, it's probably not Joseph's fault. It's the writers, right? And so verse 4. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come closer to me." And they came closer, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold to Egypt." And just to be clear, remember, Joseph's brothers did not sell him to Egypt. Joseph's brothers sold him to the Ishmaelites. Just a point of clarification. "Now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me ahead of you to save your lives." And this is where you really get into the idea of the purpose of suffering here. And you likely get this may be one of the first stories in the Bible where we get this, is where Joseph rationalizes the hard things he's been through, or the rough times he's been through, and has basically said, "You're not responsible. You're not responsible for the bullshit you did. You're not to be held accountable to the bullshit you did, because this was actually God using you to get me here to save you. God so loved the killers that he convinced the killers to sell me into slavery instead, so that I could rise up in slavery and eventually be their salvation." That is like, damn. Joseph's brothers get a better deal than Judas does. Because remember, Judas is used in the same way, according to the text, that what he does is supposed to be the reason that everybody else gets an opportunity at salvation. But Judas feels so bad about it, according to one interpretation, that he goes out and hangs himself. According to another interpretation, other people feel so bad about it that they go out and kill Judas. But in this case, nope. Joseph tells his brothers that basically it was God's plan, so you're good. Why doesn't Judas get that benefit? Okay, so do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me ahead of you to save lives. I read that. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. So God sent me ahead of you to ensure for you a remnant on the earth, and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Now, therefore, it was not you who sent me here, but God, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh. I don't remember that being said anywhere. and lord of all of his household and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry up and go to my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. For you shall live in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your grandchildren and your flocks and your herds and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine to come, and you and your household and all that you have would be impoverished if you didn't sell me into slavery and I didn't rise in the ranks and was able to come back and get you. Behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth which is speaking to you. Now you must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt and all that you have ever seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept on them. I think wept with them would have been better. Weeping on them is a little odd. And afterward his brothers talked with him. Now, when the news was heard in Pharaoh's house that Joseph's brother had come, it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your livestock and go to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Whew. And just to be clear, there is no fat of the land because the land is in famine. So I don't know what this means, Um, but you're going to get some good grain, that's for sure, because we've been storing up. Now you are ordered, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. And do not concern yourselves with your property, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each of them he gave changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments for doing absolutely nothing. This is the wealth of Egypt that's being given away. And to his father he sent the following: 10 male donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and sustenance for his father on the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, do not quarrel. They went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan. They said to him, Joseph is still alive. He's ruler of the land of Egypt. When they told him all the words of Joseph that he had spoken to them, when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, then the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Then Israel said, it is enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. After reading these 4 chapters together, the one thing that is absolutely clear to me is that Joseph needs to see a fucking therapist. All right. Because this could have been read quite a few ways. One of the ways that stand out to me now is that I used to be really weirded out about what was going on between Joseph and his brothers in these chapters. And now it seems, now that I'm willing, to kind of look at this differently, Joseph just seems to be like a manipulative jackass here. He's being 100% petty. And it's almost, and this is why I say brother man needs therapy. It seems to be that he was so traumatized by what he experienced with his brothers and his father that he partly wants to make them pay and partly wants to see if they'd be capable of actually loving him, which I feel like that's why he puts them through this test of go get the younger brother. He wants to see if that family is willing to protect Benjamin in a way that it was not willing to protect him. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that's why he put them through all of this stuff. That's kind of his test. And I'm almost willing to bet that if they would have failed this test, he likely would have had them all killed. This could have been his Targaryen moment right here, where this brother could have went either way, 50-50. You know what I'm saying? But it does seem like, like Joseph's not all right in the head right here. He's not all right in the head. And then just like people who do sometimes experience traumatic circumstances with their families, I feel like Joseph is torn in the sense of, I know y'all did this to me, but at the same time, I still want to be loved. And once they kind of pass his test, which I don't even know if it was possible to fail this test, but once they kind of pass this test, which is basically just putting up with his jackassery, then he says, you know what? Maybe they're willing to love me now. And if they are willing to love me, I'm willing to give them a whole bunch of shit that they don't deserve, not because they're so great, not because there's any type of balance here, but simply because I have been so damaged by the trauma that they put me through that I don't even recognize that what I am doing is absolutely bullshit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. It is. It is. So no, I didn't enjoy this. I thought I was going to be excited about reading back through Joseph's story. I was not. And of course, we're not through yet. We still have a few more chapters. Maybe it will turn around. But this one was highly repetitive. This all four of these chapters could have been summed up in like 3 paragraphs. I'm just saying. That's just me. And then there's just not enough good preaching in this to me. Maybe that's why I didn't go back to Joseph a lot. I talked about Joseph every now and then, but I didn't really preach his story from the scriptures. And this might be why. This might be why. Joseph was kind of a good guy up until this moment. That was last week. Last week was finally a good guy. But I don't like nepotism. And I don't like taking what belongs to other people and giving it to these other people, especially when these other people, dang, I sound like a Republican now. I sound like a MAGA guy. Huh. I'm a Bible MAGA guy, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. What is it? Make Egypt great again? Well, that's mega. That's mega. I'm a mega guy. Man, he's just taking away the citizens of Egypt's hard-earned taxes and giving it away to these undocumented illegals who are coming to take the black jobs. See how I work that in there? Mega. Make Egypt great again. All right, all right. That's enough. I think we've gone through enough of this. Again, I don't even know what I'm gonna name this one because this is so, for lack of better words, this was just boring. It was boring. It wasn't very eventful. I mean, there was some emotional stuff there, but kind of knowing the context, the emotional stuff just seems even weirder, which is, again, why I say Joseph, he needs to see a therapist, and his therapist will let him know that, hey, what you're doing right now is not healthy. You don't need to be giving them stuff that they don't deserve. If you want to build a relationship with them, that's fine, but you shouldn't be paying for this relationship. That's good stuff right there. I feel like that was a word for somebody. You shouldn't be paying for this relationship. Listen, whoever you are, wherever you are, I stopped by to tell you, I stopped by to let you know that God says that you shouldn't be paying for relationships unless it's a prostitute. All right, I'm just playing. I mean, I'm not, but it's fun, right? I mean, prostitutes can be fun. That's not what I was saying, but you get the point. That is all I have for today. I literally don't know what else I could say about this. Hopefully, next week when we pick up in chapter 46, we'll be able to get into something that's, you know, actually interesting. Because this was not for me, probably not for you either. But this was just not that interesting. Joseph is crazy. Joseph needs therapy. That will probably be the name of this. I think Joseph needs therapy. I think we'll go from there. All right, but I'm going to wrap up now because I have a lot of work to do. As you notice, this video did not open with an intro because I was recording it last minute and I'm just trying to get it straight out to you. But we will get to end with an outro. So if you haven't already, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, join our community, support our community through volunteering or through financially supporting, and check out our merch. That's all I have for you now. Thank you for joining me in this Bible study with the next pastor. And until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful. I'll holla at you.